we're ready to start. Welcome, everyone. Today is April 20, 2022, at the Policy Advocacy Committee meeting. My name is Max Disposti. I'm the chairperson of this committee. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone that is present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board laws. Where protections of the public is inconsistent with the other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public should be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person after 2 years, I should say, and via WebEx platform. So this will be the very first time we are trying this hybrid, so be patient with us. I will announce when we are accepting public comments on the various issues and items in the agenda. And for each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from participants in the audience they are present here in the room. And then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment as well. Each commentator will have 2 minutes to comment on single agenda items. Moderator, if you will please provide the audience instruction on how they may participate during the meeting and the appropriate times. Thank you.
Absolutely. I would like to remind the committee members and staff who are not speaking to mute their microphones during today's meeting. If background noise is detected, I will mute those microphones. There are members of the public in the audience, and meeting minutes are being taken, so we ask members and staff to please identify yourselves before speaking. For purposes of today's meeting, when Chairperson Despoti, I hope I said that correctly,
yeah, that's correct.
opens public comment. Members of the public who would like to provide public comment at the DCA headquarters location in Sacramento can approach the table and microphone at the front of the room. For those joining us on WebEx, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature and the hand raise feature to facilitate public comment. When public comment is called for, I will open the question and answer feature, and you will hear me refer to it as the Q&A. Members of the public who wish to make a comment can click on the Q&A icon and type the word comment into the text box and click the send button. To utilize the hand raised feature, simply click on the hand icon next to your name to raise your hand and lower your hand. Those who have called in to the meeting may dial *3 to raise and lower their hand. These instructions will be displayed on screen during public comment. After we have taken public comment from our Sacramento location, I will call on those individuals requesting to comment through WebEx. And back to you, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, moderator. So now it's time for us to call the meeting in order and ask Christina Kitamura for please calling the quorum for us. Thank you.
Good morning. Max Disposi?
Present.
Wendy Strack?
Present.
For the record, John Sovek is absent. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. This is usually the time when our board members introduce themselves, so I'll just go ahead. And my name is Max Disposti. I'm the public member of the Board of Behavioral Sciences and board chair.
Wendy Strack, public member.
Wonderful. And we know that John Sovek is not here today. Okay, at this point, before we begin, also, we just want to remind our speakers and our audience to stay on the topic when making comments that they are on agenda items. The first agenda items is the discussion of the possible approval of the January 21st and 2022 committee meetings minutes agenda. Since it's only you and I, Wendy, so I'm going to ask you if you have any suggested amendments or if you would like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the January 21st, 2022 committee meeting minutes.
Wonderful. And I'm seconding the motion. And
Public comment?
no comments. Oh, now is the comments, public comments. If we have any comments from the public, they're present here or from our if our moderator can help us to go to the public if there are any comments.
Bear with me just a moment.
No problem.
All right, I have opened for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will take comments in the order we have requests. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this
Sure.
time?
Thank you, moderator. Yes. Okay, back to us. I know we have a motion on the floor, moved by Board Member Wendy Strack and second by myself. If there are any other comments or suggestions, I will ask for a roll call. Christina?
Okay, Max DeFosi,
Yes?
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
and motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Christina. Next on our board agenda is the discussion and possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 646, Law Departments of Consumer Affairs, and that from the board's expunged conviction agenda item 4. Roseanne, would you like to provide us with an overview of the bill?
Yeah.
Thank you, and welcome, and good morning.
Thanks. Yes, I'm Roseanne Helms, the legislative manager for the board. So I'll get started off here. We have quite a few bills to consider. AB 646 is a 2-year bill that is still alive and moving. The board considered this bill last year and took a support if amended position. And this bill has to do with consumer affairs boards and expunged convictions. It would require DCA boards within 90 days upon a licensee or former licensee's provision of a certified copy of expungement to update the online license search system with a notification of the expungement order if the person is relicensed or reapplies for licensure, or to remove the posting of revocation and previously posted arrests and charges and convictions if the person's license was revoked and they're no longer licensed and have not reapplied. So currently, under current law, boards are permitted to suspend, revoke, or discipline a license on the grounds that the person has been convicted of a substantially related crime. State entities, including the board, are required to provide the status and information regarding every license issued. And so that has to include information on suspensions and revocations of license and other disciplinary action. The medical board already has a similar provision to this, and it's in its statute where they are required to remove certain expunged convictions. Upon talking to the medical board, it's not, if one person handles the workload, it's not a huge fiscal impact or anything like that. And so the author simply says they're trying to reduce employment barriers for people who have previous criminal records who have been rehabilitated and whose convictions has been dismissed or expunged through the judicial process. The reason we took a support if amended position on the bill last year, the board had a few concerns about removing the revoked posting for an individual who is not currently licensed and does not reapply, and that's because there's some unique circumstances specific to this particular board with people who have gotten a license revoked. There's a few other things that they can still do. They could go and work in an exempt setting, and so that does not require a license. That's a school, college, university, or nonprofit and charitable. And if the revoked license posting is removed from the website, the employee in exempt setting really would have no idea that the person had a revoked license. They could go practice in another state, and the other state would not be able to look at the history and take that into account. And also, when the board revokes a license, sometimes a former licensee will choose to practice in a field related to the board's profession, such as life coaching. That's an example of a related field that does not require a license and is not regulated. However, the fact of the revocation may be something that the consumer might want to know before they seek out services. So given these concerns, last year the board requested an amendment to section 493.5A2. Instead of requiring deletion of a license revocation if there is an expungement and the person does not reply, the board believed public protection would be better served by requiring a notification of the expungement and corresponding date to be posted. So just leave it up there, but note that it's expunged so that the person looking up the former licensee could take that information into account. Staff had submitted the above position and concerns to the office via letter. but the amendments to address them have not been made to this at this time. The author does plan to move the bill again this year. So that is AB 646.
So question, Roseanne. Sorry, Max is supposed to hear. Question. So our suggested motion will be the one that we discussed at the board, is to reconfirm the intention of the board in this session, and then move it back to the board until the bill passes goes through the legislation process.
That's what I would recommend, that you continue the support recommend the board to continue the support if amendment position, right, considering the amendments suggested to 493.5A2.
Okay, wonderful. So definitely would like to get some input from the public on this. Are there any comments from people on? They're present here? No, we're good to go. I can see. Thank you. I love the personal direct interactions versus Zoom. And then moderator, if we can open to the, maybe I should make a motion first, legal, so that we don't do this twice. Is that correct? Yeah, you see, I'm learning. It only took me 6 years. So the motion that we submitted in the past, Roseanne, was, I see it really here, will be the same motion that pretty much we're...
Yeah, I would recommend a support if amended to make the amendments recommended in the analysis to okay, 493.5A2.
That will be how the motion is going to be read.
Yeah.
Love it. I adopt it. So I'll make the motion as read, and I don't know if Wendy would like to add anything.
I don't have any questions at this time, but I'll second them.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. And this is the time where we can go to the public. And moderator, again, if you can please open to the public. Thank you.
All right. We are once again open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. And we have a request for comment from Ben Caldwell. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Ben, we've sent you a request to unmute your mic.
Good morning. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Ben Caldwell, licensed MFT, would encourage the committee to recommend a support position on this bill. It's difficult to understand the public protection benefit of continuing to post an expunged conviction. The intention of expungement is really supposed to be to clear someone's record. And if the expungement does not, in fact, do that, then it's easy to see the possibility that someone who has had a conviction expunged, has done everything right to make that happen, would continue to suffer negative impacts in terms of their ability to obtain employment, serve clients, etc. If a conviction has been expunged, then presumably that expungement means that they are clear to move forward with their life. And I would encourage the board to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
All right.
Anyone else? Sorry.
That appears to be the entirety of our request for comment at this moment, Mr. Chair. Back to you.
So we are ready to close the public portion comments of this agenda item. Coming back to our committee, I don't know if there are any other comments from Wendy, in addition to...
No, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that I just would like to add, I know this conversation hasn't started now, and we have a change in board composition, so I do feel comfortable to repropose the motion, also because the legislative route, it's still long, and the board will have the opportunity to actually discuss this with more members and also with members of the community as well, so they can definitely bring their inputs forward. So saying that, if we are ready to vote, we're good? Okay. Christina, if you would like to call the vote, thank you.
Max Esposi?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you again, Christina. So next agenda item is agenda item number 5, and there's the discussion, the possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 988, Bauer-Cahan, I hope I said that right, on mental health, on 988 crisis hotline. And Roseanne, again, if you would like to summarize the bill for us, thank you.
Yeah, so AB 988 is another 2-year bill that the board previously was supporting, and it is regarding implementing a statewide 988 mental health crisis hotline. The 988 crisis hotline is mandated from federal legislation that had passed a few years ago, that is designated as a number to connect individuals experiencing mental health crisis to suicide prevention and mental health crisis counselors. And so the states are required to implement the program by starting this July. So starting July, 988 centers must provide a person experiencing a behavioral health crisis access to a trained counselor to address their immediate needs 24 hours a day. By July 2027 or January 2027, the 988 centers would be required to coordinate with the relevant programs for deployment for services more extensively. So it's kind of a ramping up to a greater goal. And so the authors of this bill didn't continue with it last year because they got funding to sort of start the program, and now this bill is sort of finishing what their goals are. So they're going to continue moving it in June once they figure out what additional budget funding that they've gotten for the year and moving forward. There's an FAQ in Attachment A that talks about the program more completely, and the board took a support position on this same version last year. So I don't think there's that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The rest of it, I will open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Roseanne. I was on when I should have been. Am I correct if I say, do we still need a motion for this item?
Yes.
We do? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from Wendy, our board?
No, this one seems pretty straightforward, so we're just reaffirming what we've done before on it.
Exactly. We had a lot of positive, affirming conversation in the past months about how beneficial this will be for the community and so forth. So, yeah, definitely yes. So, moderator, if you can help us and I will maybe make a motion before we go out so we don't go twice. So the motion, how would that be, just in support of the bill, Roseanne?
Recommend the board support AB 988.
Okay, perfect. Recommending the board to support Assembly Bill 988 for crisis online. That's the motion on the floor that I'm making.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Wendy. And we're going out to the public. Moderator? Oh, and we have the present, sorry. The time I wasn't going to ask it happened. We have actually a comment from someone that is present. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Alley with the California Association of American Family Therapists. And
thank you, Jennifer.
Support position on this bill, and we agree or would like the board to.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I apologize again. And now I'm sure there is no one else in the public that can make a comment. So we are moving to the public comment sessions of this agenda item. Moderator, if you can help us with that, please.
We are now open for public comment on 988. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will take requests for comments in the order they are received. And we have a request for comment from Rebecca Gonzales. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Rebecca.
This is Rebecca Gonzales with the National Association of Social Workers California chapter. Just wanted to let you know that we are also in support of this bill. Thank you.
And that appears to be the entirety of our requests for comments at the moment. Would you like to close comments, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Roberta Gonzales, for being with us. At this point, we have a motion on the floor, unless there are any other additional comments from my fellow board members? No, at this moment. So we can call for the vote. Christina?
Max Esposi,
Yes?
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving to next agenda item number 6, which is also the discussion and possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 1635, new one, on suicide prevention. And mental health provider educational loan repayment. Roseanne, again, thank you.
Yes, this bill is the first of about 5 bills we're going to consider today that do various loan repayment or stipend programs to help support mental health professionals who are working in either high-need areas or rural areas or underserved settings, things like that. And so I'm going to go over the existing law one time so we don't have to go over it 5 times. It's all pretty similar. So for this bill, I'll do it, and then it applies to the other ones as well. But for this particular bill, creates a new account in the Mental Health Practitioner Education Fund to provide grants to repay educational loans for specified board licensees and registrants who commit to providing direct patient care for at least 24 months in an organization that provides mental health services to individuals who have been referred there by a suicide prevention hotline. So under existing law, we do already have a couple of loan repayment programs that have been fairly successful. We have what happens now is our licensees, our LMFTs, LCSWs, and LPCCs pay an additional $20 biennial fee at renewal, and that's deposited into something called the Mental Health Practitioner Education Fund. And that is administered, that money goes to the Department of Healthcare Access and Information. It has a fund there, and then the Department of Healthcare Access and Information issues loan repayment grants to recipients who meet the criteria of the program, and they meet every year to select the loan repayment grants. And so under the program, licensed mental health service provider is defined, and it includes our associates and licensees. A lot of times in these proposals that we're going to be looking at today, the grants are required to or must be given priority to consideration to individuals working in a mental health professional shortage area, and that's actually an area given a designation by the Health Resources and Services Administration of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Any licensed mental health service provider who provides direct patient care in a funded facility or mental health shortage area can apply for grants to reimburse educational loans under the current program. And the HCAI, the entity that administers the grants, needs to consider things like the mental health professional shortage area, the need and cultural and linguistic needs of the area, things like that. So that's one program. There's already a separate program that was created a few years ago. It's an additional account in the Mental Health Practitioner Education Fund that provides grants to repay educational loans in a shortage area for 24 months for individuals who were formerly in California's foster youth care system. So there's a newer program that's implemented a couple of years ago that's just started that does that as well. So this would be a new account. It doesn't currently identify a funding source for the loan repayment grants, so the author indicates they're working on that. There is all of these, there's a big budget ask going on this year with the governor for mental health. Some of these bills that we're going to talk about today have already asked, some have not yet and are looking for funding. So this is the first of these bills. It's got some support from the California Council of Community Behavioral Health Agencies. There's some opposition from the County Behavioral Directors Association. They write in their letter that they are concerned that the bill solely extends the loan repayment programs to private for-profit facilities not located in a mental health shortage area, because this one just focuses on people who are referred by a suicide hotline. So their concern with this was they note the most adversely impacted are public behavioral health delivery systems, and it could possibly make the shortage worse for public funded agencies or organizations that are nonprofits. So that was some interesting feedback that I noted that was in the committee analysis for this one. So I think that that's pretty much all I have to say about 1635, so we'll see what everybody else thinks.
Thank you, Roseanne. And we know, yes, there are other versions around this topic as well, so this is not the only one. Any comments from Wendy?
Yeah, I was curious about the Behavioral Health Directors Association position, so thank you for that. I think they bring up some valid points about where the shortages truly are with therapists. I think we know there's a system-wide shortage, so anything we can do to help make it more affordable to become a therapist, I think is a positive thing. So I'm inclined to support these types of programs, but we want to make sure they're administered in a way that actually address the problem. So I think that's a valid point to consider for potential amendments, that maybe we make it a little more targeted. Then my concern also is because there isn't yet a funding source identified, I think the last thing we want to do is put this into a program where it's probably already oversubscribed without a funding to go with it to actually meet that need. So I think those are my two concerns initially, is making sure we're actually targeting where the need is, and then that this should not go forward unless there's a funding source identified. I don't think we want to put it into what is already being funded through the $20 fee.
Thank you, Wendy. Actually, I second all of that. I share the same concern. I think it comes from a very positive place, because we are trying to figure out where the most needed communities and challenges are, and also the obstacles the new licensee had to endure as in their process of becoming licensees. And but also we want to do it in the right way, so that we know exactly how the impact is going to be. And also, are we really taking care of everyone, right? One thing I already had an issue with prior to the existing laws is that taking care, so only for those people that are receiving referrals from the suicide hotline, it's also very limited, right, in the pool of diverse sources of referrals that we know exist out there, because not everyone goes through that route. So there are a lot of nonprofits, in fact, that they are the recipients of those referrals process, but not necessarily through a hotline. So that, for instance, what it means for people that have been taking care of population through different means of referrals. So definitely, I feel the same way. So I don't know if if there is a motion that supports our continued, like an amendment on that, or Roseanne, if you can help us to.
Yeah, this is probably a good time to go over potential positions anyways.
Okay,
It's kind of a new year, and so of course there's a support and oppose potential positions, and then support, if amended, is a kind of a friendlier way of sort of nudging to say, hey,
right,
we like the concept, but, could you think about this? Oppose unless amended is a little bit more heavy-handed. We're going to straight up oppose it if you don't do this. So it's a little bit more likely to get attention, but it's a little bit harsher. Of course, there's always a neutral position, which is we're not going to weigh in, or no position, which we wouldn't even necessarily write a letter for. We just are going to watch it.
Yeah, thank you, Roseanne. As always, I think also in the respect of past board conversations in regards to understanding the needs in the community, supporting our licensee, and definitely we would like to offer the support to change that bill in a way that's more comprehensive, and perhaps understanding more the ways, like Wendy nicely said, how this bill is going to affect and support our licensees. So something that on those terms will really be helpful. I would like to obviously hear our comments from the public here in the House, if there are any, and not at this moment, or by going out with our moderator and see if there's anyone watching that would like to chime in. Moderator, please.
We are now open for public comment on 1635. If you have a request for public comment, please send that comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And if you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And we have a request for comment from Rebecca Gonzales. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, Rebecca Gonzales with the National Association of Social Workers California chapter. We did not take a position on this bill, and we're watching it. The reason that we are watching it is that, it was mentioned how it only refers to individuals who have been referred by a suicide prevention hotline. It just seemed a little unworkable to us, the way that the bill was constructed. So even though I think we're supporting every other workforce augmentation bill that's on the agenda today, this one, we just saw it as being problematic in its application. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Do we have
And
any?
that's my apologies. Those are all the requests for comments we have at the moment. Would you like to close comments at this time, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you so much. And I apologize, I actually spoke too soon. Thank you again, Rebecca, for your comments. I think that goes also in the reflection. I do stand on the idea of seeing if it's modifiable and see if the bill has room to grow, but perhaps with the comments that also reflecting in our concern about who is the funding, where the referrals are coming from. There is a lot to look into it. So I'm sure Roseanne will work the magic and maybe making recommendations as to approve if modified and giving staff the authority to look into the possible language in how to. What I'm kind of hearing
is that. Sorry. I'm kind of hearing a support in concept, but we have some concerns, and we would like to see amendments with including a budget act to avoid impacting existing programs. I'm hearing concern about that. And then second, modifications to broaden support to include nonprofit and public systems. Would that be accurate?
That could be one of those. Or Wendy as well.
Yeah, I think you brought up an important point about where the referrals are coming from. So I think if there are entities that are serving folks, who are at risk of suicide, regardless of where the referral comes from, I think that's still an important need to support therapists that are doing that work. So I think you had an important point about not limiting where the referrals come from.
Right. Which at the moment is identifiable only through the hotline, suicide hotline.
Okay, so maybe an amendment to not limit where the referrals come from for services related to suicide?
Suicide prevention hotline, yeah.
So, okay. So I would say that it sounds like support if amended with a budget asked to avoid impacting existing programs, and then broaden to support nonprofit and public systems, and not be limiting of where the referrals come from if they're related to suicide prevention. Does that work?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roseanne. That will be a motion on the floor, I guess. Yes.
I will make that motion, what Roseanne said.
Okay.
Do we have to say it again? Oh, sorry. Okay, I will motion what Roseanne said.
And I'll second that motion as well. I believe, look at our council, we need to go to the public again because now we have actual motion on the floor. And first of all, we are looking at the people that are present. There are any comments? No. So moderator, if you can help us to go and open to the public, please, with the motion that we just read.
Absolutely. We are now taking public comments on the motion for 1635. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you. Okay, and we're back to the board. I don't believe there are any other comments, so we can ask Christina to call the vote.
Max Disposi,
Yes?
Wendy Strack.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving now to agenda 7, number 7, discussion and possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 1662, Gibson, regarding the licensing board and disqualification from licensures for criminal convictions. Roseanne, again, if you will provide us with an overview.
Yes. So AB 1662 allows a prospective applicant with a criminal conviction to request a pre-application determination from a DCA licensing board to determine if they may or may not be disqualified from licensure, so that they have more information before they pursue the education that's needed for licensure. So right now, boards are only permitted to deny a license on certain grounds. The applicant needs to have been convicted of a crime within the previous 7 years that's substantially related to the qualifications or duties of the profession, or if that 7-year limit doesn't apply, though, if they're convicted of a serious felony, and there's some definitions in law of what a serious felony is. The other reason that the board can deny a license is the applicant has been subject to formal discipline by a licensing board in the previous 7 years based on professional misconduct. So those are the two reasons. The board is prohibited from requiring an applicant to disclose any information or documentation regarding their criminal history when they're applying for licensure. And the board is required to develop criteria to evaluate the rehabilitation of a person when considering denying, suspending, or revoking a license. So in this particular bill, it allows the prospective applicant to request a pre-application determination. In the request, the applicant would need to provide information regarding their criminal conviction, and then the board must make a determination within a reasonable time whether or not the prospective applicant may be disqualified from licensure based on the information provided. The author's office is seeking to provide a determination for prospective applicants because it's difficult to know whether or not somebody would be denied before they invest in expensive training and education for a license. A couple of concerns about the bill and the way that it's currently worded. It appears to require a prospective applicant seeking a predetermination to self-report their criminal convictions. It does not indicate whether the board would be required to verify them. Doing so would likely result in additional costs to the board. When an applicant self-reports, there's a possibility that they may inadvertently not include certain relevant information, or that incorrect or incomplete information would be reported, and then that would make the predetermination inaccurate. So there would need to be some pretty heavy fine print going along with the predetermination, saying this is based on this particular set of facts. There's other factors that could affect the accuracy of the predeterminations that the person might not account for. It would not take into account rehabilitation efforts of the applicant or the time passed since the conviction. If they're thinking about going to school, that can take several years. So something that would make them subject to denial right now, if it's only 4 or 5 years old, after they finished a 2-year degree program, it could be up to 7 years, and it's possible that they wouldn't be denied at that time, or that by that time they would have taken more steps to show rehabilitation as the conviction becomes more recent. Or on the reverse side, they could commit additional violations or convictions, and that could affect their future eligibility as well. So another concern, the bill does not permit the board to charge a new fee to make the predeterminations. So the staff believes the board would need 2 new full-time positions, an office technician and probably a staff services analyst to review the requests and documentations, make sure they're accurate, make sure they're make a determination and prepare a response. It's also unclear from a fiscal perspective if the board would be required to gather additional information about court convictions. Some counties charge various amounts for court documents. There's not a consistent fee across counties, so if the board was going to verify all of the information, there would be a cost likely there to the board as well. Applicants who are denied also have a right to a hearing under Business and Profession Code Section 485. So that is one method of recourse applicants have. Also, the board has developed an outreach document to help applications with a past conviction or disciplinary issue, understand how that will affect the application process from them. So I've included a link to that particular outreach document in the analysis. So that is 1662.
Thank you, Roseanne. I know that I believe we started discussing this at the board previously, or no, this is brand new, right?
No, this is a brand new one.
Yeah.
We've had similar discussions about similar bills in past years, but this one's kind of a unique twist on it.
It is, because I do see the need of, for an applicant to try to figure out the possibility for them to become licensee based on their conviction, but also there is the complexity, also the judicial system where, for instance, in different states is different. So how the state of California is going to determine the documentations that are going to be required and who is doing the investigation to predetermine the qualification, right, before actually we see the whole story. So I'm a little bit, I would like more discussion on this, because definitely I can see the need of, for someone who's applying to try to figure out early on if they're even qualifiable after they go through all the study, all the applications and licensee, and then also the probation, that could come forward. But at the same time, it's also very difficult. What are the parameters, how we can make that predetermination without having all the information in front of us? So we might risk to do damage in one way or another, to stop someone from license to becoming a license based on information that is not complete, or the opposite. So I wouldn't know what to, perhaps maybe their representations in the room and online could, if they have any feedback. I don't want to put you on the spot. It's definitely something that we would like to continue to discuss even on the board level, so that we can have more feedback as well. Wendy, what do you think?
I have similar concerns, and I'd like to hear from if they are prepared to share some feedback, because I think Roseanne outlined a whole host of problems, and Max, you did too, that could come out of this. And is there some liability on DPS's part for telling somebody they aren't qualified, and then maybe we tell them, sure, it would you could get your license. They go through all of the education and everything, and then apply, and then get denied later. Is there some, are we liable then if we told them they probably would get licensed and then for some reason don't because we had incomplete information? So the cost, the liability, I'm sort of inclined to think, making sure we have a robust outreach process that shares the information with people and then kind of let them decide for themselves is a better way to go. But I do also understand, I do also understand the need to, it's a long process to get licensed. So knowing up front if you're likely to be licensed is an important feature too. So, I see both, but I see a whole host of problems with how this is currently written.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I would like to add, I noticed in the proponents' side of the bill, they were mentioning that has been done in 20 other states. I would be curious to know how that it's even, I know we sometimes, most of the time, we know this, we can't just apply comparison with other states because there is a set of laws, of state laws that apply or don't apply. So, it could never be in translations into what California law is. But I'm curious to see, because I'm sure those are concerns in other states as well, right? So how they have managed that, and what did they put in place perhaps to protect that? So that will be another things to find out, in my opinion. In this case, this will be, obviously, is there a motion on here, Roseanne, too, or?
I think that it would be good to hear from what the stakeholders say, because
right.
there's definitely some benefit. We do get people that contact us and want to know, hey, I want to become a LMST or a LCSW. Is that even viable? And that's a fair question.
Right.
But there are definitely, I see some concerns, with giving somebody a concrete answer without having all the information. So I'd be curious what stakeholders
Absolutely,
think.
absolutely. Okay, let's then move to public comments at the moment. We do have one in person.
Good morning, Jen Alley with CAMP. We don't have a formal position on the bill. We are watching it. we do have some concerns with the additional workload for BPS staff. Staff comments indicated that 2 new positions would be required to complete this, and I was just wondering where the funding for those positions would be. And would the board have the authority to charge an applicant for this background check evaluation that would be conducted by the bill? Agree there's some positive and negative impact on that. The timeline between when they were arrested and when the conviction occurred and when they asked the board and when they completed their degree, right? And so I do think that the information document that BBS has already developed would probably be helpful and a resource. And so we're really just concerned about, licensing fees changing again and sort of diversion of BBS resources. And so we would not want our licensing fees to be utilized for this at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. I believe we can ask our moderator to go outside and see if there are any public comments on webinar.
We are now open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box and send that comment to all participants. Specifically, this is regarding AB 1662. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. And we have a request from Ben Caldwell, and would also like to note that it was difficult hearing the in-person comment. We are working on turning up the volume on that microphone, but for the time being, as close as we can get to the microphone, we will try and make that happen. Ben, we have sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much. Ben Caldwell, MFT. I apologize if this is redundant with what Ms. Alley was saying. I don't have a particular recommendation as far as a position on the bill, but just to inform the discussion a little bit. In my time working as core faculty for university, we would often have students or prospective students who would come to us and say, I have this criminal conviction in my past. Is it worth it for me to even try to get a degree and pursue licensure in California? And the best that we could do in that situation is to say, we don't know. That even if we admit you into our educational program and charge you tens of thousands of dollars for your degree, you might ultimately have your application for registration or licensure declined by the board. So I agree certainly with the motivations of this bill to let people have some information coming in about whether it's worth it to them to try. Do share the concerns that Chair Disposti discussed, and wondered whether it might be possible to address at least some of those concerns through very strong disclaimer kind of language on a determination letter, making clear that your determination is based on the information that the individual has made available to you, and that you might learn more information by getting the complete record, and also that between now and the time of an application that a lot can change in either direction. I wonder whether that might at least make it possible to offer something without giving someone a promise or a guarantee that they'll be able to get licensed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ben. My apologies. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
No. My apologies. Actually, I was just asking if there were any other comments.
Yes. Ashley asks if the in-person commenter can repeat what was said. And there are a couple more comments after that.
Yes, she's approaching the mic right now. Thank you, Jen.
This is Jennifer Alley with CAMP. Hope everybody can hear me better. I'm tall and the microphone was a little bit low. So CAMP doesn't have a formal position on the bill. We're just monitoring it to see how it moves forward. We would really like to see that any new staff is funded through fees by this bill or by the state's general fund. We wouldn't want our member licensing fees used to fund these positions, because we never want any workload diverted from the processing of applicants. but do understand the concerns. And, there is a shortage of behavioral health providers in the state, and we wouldn't want to do anything to deter them from growing, but we do have some concerns about costs and workload on the department. Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, moderator, were we able to hear that?
It was better. It was still very quiet on our end.
We're adding more books to the mic, so hopefully. Thank you, Steve. Okay, so we'll make sure that the message goes out. Thank you, moderator. Are there any public comments?
Rebecca Gonzales is next. Bear with us just a moment, Rebecca, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Rebecca Gonzales, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. On this bill, we do not have a position. We're watching. The reason that we're watching it is that we are active with an occupational licensing group that exists to help people who have a past interaction with the criminal justice system obtain licensure in various professions. And we have a lot of concerns about the bill. We believe it's well-intentioned, but we do believe it's flawed. And also another reason that we're watching it is our understanding is that they are working on amendments. So we're trying to see what that will turn out to be. But some of the concerns we have is that by relying on the applicant, there's always been a problem of their inaccurate memory in reporting their conviction information to boards. A lot of times people may forget something that happened a long time ago, or they might self-report convictions that they don't have to self-report according to Business and Professions Code 480. And so there's concern about sharing information that they don't need to share. They'd also like to see language to consider likely expected date of licensure because of the 7-year washout period because of AB 2138. I think somebody said that in a different way. And they're also concerned about the unintended use of pre-application by schools and training programs, saying that they require that they do this pre-application process approval during the application, admission, or enrollment. So the Council of State Governments, I think, is the sponsor of this bill. And I think, Max, you asked about other states that have similar law, but you can't compare those states to California because we have AB 2138. One comment Ben made about they often, as faculty, they often get questions about people who are concerned, will they ever be able to get their license? And we certainly get those questions in social work schools. But one additional thing we advise folks is to look at expunging their records and maybe connecting with various groups that exist out there to help clear people's record and assist them in that process, and that they start that process early so that they can be ready when they graduate to apply for licensure. So that's those are our concerns. Thank you.
Moderator, are there any other comments?
That appears to be all of our requests for comments, although I would like to take just a few more seconds to see if Andina and Ashley would like to make comments of their own, or if they were just requesting a louder in-person microphone. All right, let's give it another 10 seconds. There appears to be no other comments. Would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you. And back to the board, thank you, Rebecca, again, for your intervention. It was very helpful also to articulate more about any other possible concerns, also even solutions to the idea of implementing a pre-screening. So I was also thinking, based on what Ben was saying, imagine the amount of folks that at that point will require more information before even they endure into the studies, right? Let's say we're going to receive screening from students that they are just approaching to their master level before even they start doing that. So because what's the point of doing that if then I can't even get a license? So I can't even imagine the amount of information that the BBS will have to receive, not just in terms of staff utilizations or resources, but also even do we have even the jurisdictions to go that far out with people that are not even licensed yet? We're going to tell them you're not gonna be. So it's definitely complex. At the same time, I just want to make sure that for those of us that join us, not just today, but in the past few months in conversation, even the past tense with the board, we always believed that people with a history of past turn out to be the best therapists that serve the state of California in a way that this is not by any means intended to be like, oh, if you have a past criminal conditions that you're not fit to qualify. Usually we have seen the opposite in regards, within the guidelines of the law, in regards to how many people with a past of challenges or trouble have brought the expertise and also the connections with the community. So the community we serve looks like the community that we look like the community that we serve. So I think I just want to make sure I felt that they need to clarify that because sometimes there might be a tendency to extrapolate these conversations out of a context where actually the BBS has intervened many times, where we have amazing guest speakers here sharing their story and empowerment through their journey or recovery, for instance, right? They made the best, and they're making the best therapists out there. So I just want to share that just for the sake of recognition. So I don't know in regards to a motion, Roseanne, because obviously there are a lot of challenges with the bill. Should we just stay neutral, or what would be the legality around?
I would recommend, because there are a lot of questions that this raises,
Right.
and I believe that the author is going to have to address it further. I would recommend just watching for now and reconsider at the board meeting.
But not to take a position, that means.
Right.
Okay. That's also a motion. No, not necessarily. Right.
Staff is going to continue to watch this bill regardless, and we can bring it back to the full board next time you meet, because there also might be amendments by then.
Hopefully. Yeah.
I like that. Thank you, our legal counsel from Sabina. Okay, so then we can, unless there are any other comments, we can move on to our next item in the agenda, which is item number 8. And discussion and possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 1733, QUIRC, on state bodies, open meetings.
Yeah, so we saw a similar bill to AB 1733 last year, and this is the author's attempt to run this again. It's actually running as an urgency measure, and it would modernize the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act to include a teleconference component, because as you know, that's become very important to our meetings over the past 2 years. Right now, boards under DCA are required to meet at least 2 times each calendar year, once in Northern California and once in Southern California, to facilitate participation by the public and licensees. The Bagley-Keene Act also requires that all meetings of state body be open and public and persons be permitted to attend. It does not prohibit a body from holding an open or closed meeting by teleconference, but for meetings conducted by teleconference, there's certain specific requirements under the Bagley-Keene law. Agendas need to be posted at all teleconference locations. Each teleconference location in the notice and agenda of the meeting must be accessible, must be listed and must be accessible to the public. So that means right now, if a board member is teleconferencing from their house, they need to have the address listed, and the public needs to have access to that site. And then the members of the public need to be able to address the state body at each teleconference location. So this bill would do a few things. It amends the definition of a meeting to include any congregation of a majority of the members of the state body, including a meeting held entirely by teleconference. It requires a state body to hold open meetings by teleconference and allows for the use of teleconference in closed sessions. It requires the portion of the teleconference meeting that is open to the public to be both visible and audible to the public at a location specified in the notice. And it requires the state body to provide a means for the public to remotely hear audio of the meeting either by audio, video, or via telephone. The state body must provide the public with a physical location to hear and address the state body, which must be identified in the meeting notice. But the members of the state body can remotely participate in a meeting, and they can choose whether or not to be physically present, and they don't have to post their physical meeting location or in order to be deemed present. So that's really the big change of this bill is it's requiring we would require the board to have a physical meeting site and a teleconference meeting site, but the board members that were teleconferencing would not have to post their physical location because there would be a kind of a general master physical location that was already provided. And so, and in exchange for all of that, it provides that the state bodies under DCA that meet 2 times each year are not required to meet once in Northern California and once in Southern California. They would just be required to have a physical meeting site, but there's no location requirements. One other thing, because the members of the state body that are participating in the meeting via teleconference, they would be required to disclose whether there are any other individuals 18 or older present in the room with them and the general nature of the relationship. And that's just to avoid there was concerns about outside influence from lobbyists, things like that. So overall, the point of the bill is to modernize the Bagley-Keene Act because as we've seen a great increase in public participation due to the ability to teleconference, but the law is outdated now in a few different areas now that we have technology to do remote meetings. So it kind of remains to be seen whether if this bill is running as urgency legislation. It doesn't seem to be moving as quickly as I thought it would, and so we might have more information by the time on what's going to happen with this by the time the board meets. Right now, it doesn't appear to be set for any hearings, which means it could die by the end of April, but there's still a couple of weeks left before that deadline, so it's kind of up in the air. The author's office, when I reached out to them last week, did indicate that they are negotiating amendments and that they would stay in touch with any updates. So there haven't been any updates at this time.
Thank you, Roseanne. It just makes me, Max Disposi here, it just makes me, I can't believe 2 years how much has changed, because I remember our first board meeting, the few times that we were forced to gather in teleconference was actually via phone, not even via video. It feels like 20 years ago, and it was only, 4 years ago the last time we did it? And I remember one time one of our board members, by mistake, just sent out, and as we were doing so, I was doing it from my office in Oceanside, and I needed to post it outside that the meeting was going on, and they, from this time to this time, so because it was a public meeting. And I remember one of our board members just entered the wrong zip code. And that time we didn't have a quorum for that meeting. We had to cancel the whole meeting just because a zip code was posted in the public notice, few days prior. So all of this became so absolute, almost like another time for us to even talk about it. So I do like to see these changes because also facilitate public participations. I'm really happy that today, we are able to provide connections from people that cannot be here. So it really breaks a lot of barriers, but also we like the in-person interactions because also very useful for all of us. So I would like to see where this bill goes and how it's going to change it. So I believe we're watching it too, right? So that we can actually see what other things might be introduced and also get the whole board around it as well. So that was my comment. It's just, yeah. Wendy?
I echo a lot of the same comments. I think we've seen a great amount of participation in our meetings since we've been able to have the remote participation. I think it's easier for licensees and for discipline hearings. I think it is just a tremendous benefit. I have some questions over some of, how some of these elements of the bill would work, but I don't know if it's just maybe better to wait and kind of see what happens if there are amendments that are coming. But like one of the questions about a meeting to be any kind of congregation of majority of members of the state body, it seems like that's a change to existing regulations. Like if after a board meeting, the board went to dinner, and even if no business was discussed, would that be a noticed meeting under that requirement? Okay, so that wouldn't, okay. And then with the having a teleconference location and a physical, could these be the same location, or would they have to be two separate locations that were offered?
It would be the teleconference location would be, well, basically there can be a teleconference, and then there has to be a physical meeting site. So the teleconference doesn't, like the moderators and things don't have to be physically here, but there would have to be a physical meeting site. And the bill allows, if somebody wants to have more than one physical site, they can, but it doesn't require that each board member post their physical location, which that has had some concerns, like with ADA and security in the past, of people posting, personal information and whether or not those sites are ADA compliant, things like that. So that does help that problem, because there would just be one site that would meet all of the requirements for the site, and it would be safe and secure.
So if you think about it, today's meeting could, and say as a full board meeting, we could have board members at home logged into WebEx, and maybe only the Sacramento local members come here in person. Staff's here, we're online with WebEx, we're online with all of our commenters. So it would look very similar to this.
Okay, thank you. But I would tend to agree with you that maybe we just kind of see within the next couple of weeks what amendments, and then evaluate it again after that.
That's great. Okay. Any public comments from people that are present today? No. And moderator, if we can go and see if there are any public comments from the web.
We are now accepting public comment on Assembly Bill 1733. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you, moderator. And with that, since before we move to the next agenda item, I would like to take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 10:21 to be exact. Thank you, Steve. And so we can take a little break. Thank you, everyone. Okay, everyone, we are resuming our Policy Advocacy Committees. Today is April 20, 2022, and my name is Max Disposti. I'm the chair of the Board of Behavioral Sciences, the chair of this committee as well. We are resuming our agenda for today, and the next item was item number 9, discussion and possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 2123, Villa Pudua, Bringing Healthcare into Communities Act of 2023. And Roseanne, as always.
Yes.
Thank you.
This particular bill is another one of those, kind of like AB 1635, along those same lines, where it's attempting to assist those working in health professional shortage areas. So this particular one would provide housing grants for specified health professionals to be used for mortgage payments for a permanent residence in a health professional shortage area for up to 5 years. So helping licensees and applicants with some of the expenses of that. So we already went through the existing programs that are administered by the Department of Healthcare Access and Information. And so this would create another form of assistance. It would be administered by the California Housing Finance Agency. That's because it has to do with mortgage payment assistance, and that particular agency deals with those sorts of things and housing affordability. several types of, it specifies several types of health professionals that would be eligible for the housing grants. It specifies primary care physicians, primary care dentists, and then it says mental health providers and behavioral health providers. And so the author states what they're trying to do is make sure that people can afford housing in areas where it's most needed. It does not, the bill doesn't include a funding source yet, so it's one of those ones that is kind of waiting on the funding source, and I would expect to see more information later. One just minor concern that I think needs to be fleshed out a little bit more is that clarifying the terms mental health providers and behavioral health providers. Those are both very broad terms. That could be a number of type of individuals, both licensed by the board and not licensed by the board. So I think that it would be helpful to specify further who would qualify, and so we're really targeting those individuals, and we really know who the author is intending to have covered in that. But other than that, I don't really have much to say about the bill. I think that it's trying to assist those so that they can serve areas that are most needed. Just a little bit more detail about who the providers to be served are would be helpful for in our particular board circumstances.
Thank you, Roseanne. My first question, Max Disposi here. Do they? I didn't see anything in the bill that could identify. So how do we identify the most needed area? I mean, I have an idea, but is there any particular criteria that the bill was addressing that you know of?
It would says for a permanent residence in a health professional shortage area, which is designated by the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. So they designate specific areas. So basically, the way that I interpret that is anybody who's applying in one of those areas, that's working in one of those areas, would be eligible for the grant. So it's kind of a general target, but basically it's really trying to get people into those health professional shortage areas so that they can hopefully at some point lose that designation so they're not shortage areas anymore.
Right. I wonder also if this was meant to address, I mean, I can see in our own region, the San Diego region and county, where the cost of living is so high that even a behavioral health individual, I mean, a licensee will struggle to live in the same place. And so I wonder if there is a migration of folks that are licensed in area like Sacramento, San Francisco, the Bay Area, and San Diego, and then moving inland, for instance, because the cost of life is a little bit, the housing is more affordable. So I like this bill. I'm just wondering, how do we address also the issue, and that could be another conversation, of really situations where people don't find any housing and they are in metro area that they are also challenged to serve for that same reason. Maybe you have a lot of therapists, but you don't have people really surviving the cost of life. So I've seen from my little eyes what I see around us. I see a lot of migration of people moving from the big cities in areas that they also are underserved, right? So it would be interesting to look into that as well. But I like the bill. I like the intent of the support as well. So we're watching this as well, right, to see more development, or there is a motion?
I don't know that you could choose to watch or recommend a position. I don't know that this is going to be amended further. It may, but it also may not. I haven't been given any indication about future amendments.
Okay.
It looks like it's gone. I think it's going to committee either this week or next week. So we may see some more development, or it could just pass through as is. Okay.
Thank you. Wendy?
I think your point is really valid, and I think statewide, particularly in rural areas, inland areas, I think there's a huge physician shortage, mental health shortage. There's a lot of healthcare need in those areas, so being able to meet that's important. I think this has some of the challenges that one of the earlier bills that we talked about also has, with not overburdening existing grant program funding sources. So the funding source is important, that this be a new funding source, that we're not over-tapping existing programs. And then I think it's important that we ask for clarification on the mental health providers and behavioral health providers, so that both so that we make sure we're not creating a program that from its outset is wildly oversubscribed. I mean, because if these definitions are too broad, there's no amount of funding that would ever fill that need. So making sure that the population, that it's targeted to the folks that, would be sort of most impacted by it, and not scoop in so many people that it's just going to be unworkable.
Thank you, Wendy. Actually, I agree with that as well. Would you like to make a motion with that recommendation of approval as less amended, with including the definition, a better definition about behavioral health versus mental health providers and so forth?
Yeah. So, Roseanne, would it work like supportive amended if the funding is, if it comes with new funding or the funding's clarified and then those definitions are clarified? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say the proposal for the motion will be supportive amended if a new funding source is identified versus an existing one, and to better define mental and behavioral health professionals.
I'll make that motion.
I like it. I'll second that, and then we can go to open the conversation to our public members. For those of you that are present, if there are any comments, you can approach now, but they're not. And moderator, if you can help us to see if there are any other comments from the web.
Absolutely. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. Specifically, this is regarding Assembly Bill 2123. And our first request for comment is from Rebecca Gonzales. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Rebecca Gonzales, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. We are in support of this bill, but we agree with the amendments you are proposing. Thank you.
And that appears to be all of our requests for comments at the moment. Would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, sure. Thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, as well. So coming back to the board, so we have a motion that stands, moved by Wendy and seconded by myself. And the motion says, in support of the bill with proposal of amendment that had to do with, Roseanne, maybe you can.
The motion is support if amended to make sure that it identifies a new funding source versus instead of an existing one, and then to better define mental and behavioral health professionals.
Wonderful. And Christina, if you would like to call the vote, thank you.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're now moving to agenda item number 10. Discussion of possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 2222 from RAISE on student financial aid. Golden State Social Opportunity Program is the title. And Roseanne, thank you.
Yeah, and so we're moving right along on these. This is the third of five similar sort of bills, and this one, what it does is it's kind of a new twist. It would provide grants of up to $20,000 per year for qualifying students enrolled in a postgraduate program if they commit to working in a California-based nonprofit setting for their required post-degree hours of supervised experience, either as an associate with this board or with the Board of Psychology. And so this particular bill would be administered by the California Student Aid Commission, or CSAC. They did a similar program recently for teachers, and it would provide the $20,000 grants. To qualify for the grant, the postgraduate program must be from a University of California school, a CSU school, or a nonprofit higher education institution that's accredited by the USDE. It establishes priority for the grants goes first to current or former foster youth and homeless youth, and second to individuals who are currently employed at a California-based nonprofit. And the grant recipients need to agree to work in a California-based nonprofit setting for 2 years. They have 4 years upon the completion of their program to meet the requirement. and they need to be enrolled in or have successfully completed a postgraduate program from an accepted school. They need to maintain good academic standing while they're enrolled, and then they need to ultimately satisfy the requirements to either become an associate with this board or the Board of Psychology. The bill includes language that requires this board or the Board of Psychology as applicable to certify to CSAC that a grant recipient has not obtained registration or has not performed the commitment to work in a California-based nonprofit for at least 2 years. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then it establishes certain exceptions to the repayment requirement. If the board deems the grant recipient has fulfilled their licensing requirements, an exception can be granted. If they have a condition covered under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993 or a similar state law, or if the grant recipient is called to active duty status as a member of the U.S. Armed Forces Reserve for more than 30 days. So a couple of things on this. There's a section of the bill, Education Code, Section 69821C2, states that the board will be responsible for certifying that a grant recipient either failed to obtain registration as an associate or failed to work at a California-based nonprofit setting. So first of all, it would be feasible and probably the best setup for CSAC to verify that the grant recipient obtained and kept their registration number current, because the board is not going to be tracking or having any idea who these grant recipients necessarily are. And that can be done pretty easily using the board's online license lookup feature on Breeze. If the board had to do that, then there would be probably a significant fiscal to this, because we would have to modify the Breeze program and have staff to monitor who are the grant recipients and what are they actively doing at this moment. Are they continuing to fulfill their obligations? And it would not be feasible for the board to report on whether a registrant failed to uphold their commitment to work in a California-based nonprofit for 2 years. The board doesn't track what setting requirements a associate is actively working in. We don't find out until completion of all experience hours, and that is when they submit their application for licensure, if they even ever submit their application for licensure. And that isn't done until all hours are collected. So that could be several years. Some people submit their hours right away after 2 years. Some don't submit until 4, 5, 6, 10 years later, or some just choose not to submit for whatever reason. So verify the grant recipients working in a nonprofit setting should be verified in real time by the agency administering the grants, which is CSAC. Another thing about this bill, it's unclear if the work requirement can be fulfilled while in school, because some trainees and interns are able to, like MFT trainees are able to gain hours via practicums that are pre-licensed, so it's not clear whether that would count or if they must first be registered as an associate. So that should be clarified as well. And then one other thing that's a little bit unclear is that the bill states that a grant repayment exception can be made if the board deems that the grant recipient has fulfilled the grant recipient's licensing requirements. So I'm not exactly sure what that is intended to mean. It appears to imply that upon licensure, the grant recipient does not have to complete their 2-year commitment to working in a nonprofit if they have not yet done so. So if somebody graduates, goes on to work other places, and then becomes eligible for licensure without working in the nonprofit, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that needs some further detailing and thought. The bill does identify a funding source. It's contingent on funding via the Budget Act of 2022. They are asking for funding of $150 million over 5 years. So we'll open it up to discussion.
Thank you, Roseanne. Thank you. Any comments, Wendy?
Roseanne, I think you outlined several issues that I think would need to be clarified before this would really be workable for us, particularly the last one about fulfilling the licensing requirements. And I think we've talked about this in other bills too as well, about you know, diverting staff time away from other activities to then kind of verify this activity would have financial impacts that probably are not accounted for here. So I think your suggestion to have the CSAC do the verification is a good one as well, because the amount of effort it sounds like it would take for this board to verify all that would take a significant amount of staff to be able to do that. So that doesn't seem, it seems sort of counterproductive for what they're trying to achieve there.
Yeah, no, I also share the same concern. So I would like to see it also, because there are several bills they tackle in different issues. They're all very valid and needed, but they all need a compromise in order to work. So I wouldn't know how this will fit better than the others. But again, I think it's a great idea. I love the spirit, but also the fact that something needs to be done to support our students and our interns, because more and more we heard before the barriers around being able to afford going to school and work at the same time and doing an internship. They usually, when you're lucky, is covered by a stipend. So I think that would be really, really beneficial. At first, I thought in reading the bill that was kind of like, paying off the school, the debt with the school, pay off up to $20,000. But then they could create also a market where all of a sudden all the schools are continuing to raise their fees. And now all of a sudden, knowing that there are $20,000 coming forward, I don't know how much that will be a preventive way for them to keep the cost manageable. So that could be an issue that, so I like the idea that in portion of the bill, we're looking about a stipend towards actually the interns, so that they are getting access to the money and then they make the decision. They could be just living survivalship throughout those 2-3 years versus just paying the loan, right, one or other. So I wouldn't feel comfortable to take a position on this in approval. So I don't know, maybe we watch it, or that will be the best way, and we'll see what happens with our modifications.
I think that's fine, and if you'd like, I can reach out to the author's office if you'd like me to provide technical support regarding what the current thoughts are, and then we can revisit at the board meeting.
I think that would be nice. That would be great. Thank you, Roseanne. Unless there are any other, obviously, additional feedbacks from our public that could change that, as always. Not in-person comments, and moderator, if you can help us to see if there are any public comments. Thank you.
Yeah, we are now accepting public comment on AB 2222. If you'd like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. First on the list is, I'm going to need help with your name when I unmute your microphone, Adrene Shilton. Ms. Shilton, I have sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning. This is Adrienne Shilton with the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. Just wanted to let the board know that we are in support of this bill. We think this bill is important because it will reduce financial barriers for students and incentivize them working in nonprofits, and in particular, prioritizing those former foster youth and homeless youth. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next on the list, Rebecca Gonzales. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Rebecca Gonzales with the National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. I want to thank you, Roseanne, for your thoughtful analysis. I think you brought up some good points, but we are supportive of this bill. We think it's an important scholarship program. We also like the prioritization of foster youth and homeless students. And I think that, I don't know, hopefully this isn't presumptuous, but I would recommend a support if amended position and have the specific amendments that Roseanne put in her analysis. Thank you.
All right. And next on the list, we have Kim Lewis. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Kim, we see that your microphone is unmuted, but we don't hear you yet. If you have a computer and a phone connected to the WebEx. Welcome. Go ahead, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Kim. Go ahead, please.
Are you hearing me?
Yes. And if someone would do me the favor of typing into the Q&A
All right,
box
I'm
that we
trying
can
now.
hear
Does
Kim.
this work? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Kim.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. My apologies, you guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties. This is Kim Lewis, and I am the sponsor of AB 2222, representing the California Coalition for Youth. And I really appreciate the robust discussion and feedback and technical assistance from the board. And we'll definitely take this back and work with the author's office to look at the points you raised and hope we can get you guys to a support as amended, as maybe Rebecca suggested. I'd love to work with you on this so that we can bring in more folks to support them. And this what I think for our vision for the scholarships is to support, outside costs that are not the tuition costs, but for the other pieces of living, or room and board and other stuff, so that the students can focus their full attention on their studies and their field placement hours as well. So I would hope we can work together on this. Thank you.
All right, and that appears to be all of our requests for comments at the moment. Would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you, moderator. And I'm happy actually to convey that definitely that's why your public input is very beneficial to us. It's not just the demonstrations of an exercise of democracy. We really value your input. I think the suggestion that Rebecca Gonzales was making is not pretentious at all. I would like to actually restate my motion for a support as if amended in regards to the concerns that we did share, but I don't want to go out and it seems like they were impartial to the bill when it actually is very beneficial. So I don't know how to read that, but I know Roseanne knows the magic of it.
I do. So yeah, it sounds like we're looking at a motion for a support if amended position, with the amendments being the ones discussed in items 2, 3, and 4 of the analysis, and to direct staff to reach out to the author to provide technical support in those 3 areas.
That's exactly what I meant.
That's what you're thinking, right?
Roseanne, always reading my mind. Yeah, so that would be my motion on the floor. Wendy?
I will second the motion.
Thank you. And I believe, I look at our legal counsel. Do we have to go out and ask for public comments again? Yes, we do. Not a problem, since our folks have been so beneficial to this conversation as well. So, moderator, if we can go out and ask to the public if there are any comments. Thank you.
We are once again open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment in the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. Let's take just a brief moment to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you. And coming back to the board, so I believe there are not any further discussion. Christina, if you can call the vote, thank you.
Max Esposito?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Wonderful. We're moving forward to item, excuse me, item number 10? No, 11. Ta-da. Discussion and possible recommendation regarding Assembly Bill 2666, SALAS, for Behavioral Health Internship Grant Program. Roseanne.
Yeah, so this particular one is number 4 of the 5 total of this area, and this one involves the Department of Healthcare Access, which already administers the current loan repayment grant program, and they would establish and administer a grant program to provide stipends to students in behavioral health fields of study and practice who are interning or completing licensure hours at federally qualified health centers, which are referred to as FQHCs, or who are unpaid. So right now, under existing law, federal qualified health centers, or FQHCs, and rural health centers, or RHC services, are covered Medi-Cal benefits that are reimbursed on a per-visit basis. And the law goes on to define an FQHC or RHC visit for these purposes as a face-to-face encounter between a patient of one of these places and one of several types of healthcare providers, including doctors, nurse practitioners, psychologists, and then 2 of the board's license types are included in the list of allowable professionals, and that is LCSWs and LMFTs. So right now, LCSWs and LMFTs can be reimbursed via Medi-Cal for these services at the FQHCs and RHCs. This would provide stipends to students in behavioral health fields of studies who are interning here and are unpaid. The HCAI department would consider mental health professional shortage areas and underrepresented groups in the behavioral health workforce when allocating the stipends to applicants. And so in reading what the author's intent is, they note that staffing shortages are leading the most vulnerable Californians without help or treatment, and that impacts the lives of thousands of families across the state. And so they're trying to improve and encourage employment in these particular centers. It may be, again, helpful for this particular bill to further specify qualifying criteria for the stipends, including the type of registration or profession that the student is working toward, required lengths of service, and number of years eligible for the stipend. And so that's just one piece of information that, probably needs to be hashed out a little bit further, and maybe the author may already be planning to do that. And again, this particular bill has not identified a funding source yet, so kind of the same as a couple of the other ones. So I'll open it up for discussion at this time.
Thank you, Roseanne. I'm just taking some notes. My question is a little bit, again, this is another bill that goes in the right directions of addressing a concern and a problem that we have. The fact that only those licensee or future licensee, they are doing internships on federally qualified, how do we define it, health centers. By definition, also, we know that those are, not all nonprofits that provide behavioral health are federally qualified health centers, because it requires a lot of work to become one, and also are medical funded and so forth. We have seen in the past also the disparities mostly are in regions, in areas where we have lack of federally qualified health centers, where a lot of nonprofits do the work on mental health and behavioral health as well. So I see that also this bill, I like the intent, I like where it goes, but at the same time, maybe it's reductive on the intervention. So for all of those people that do internships in nonprofit, and maybe I'll be biased because I do run a nonprofit that provide behavioral health, we are not qualified for medical. It's where those are the environments where there is most struggles, where also the nonprofits are unable to support a stipend, for instance, or unemployment, for those who are interning. So I feel a little bit, I don't know if this is going to really support all the students, in this case, all the interns, but I do see where the intent of reducing disparity through the bill is at, right? Recognizing a problem is out there. It's very similar to the other bills, but a little bit different. In my opinion, it will be more restrictive. So I would like to go to the public after Wendy wants to share anything with us and see what what they have to say.
I think the issues that you raised are the questions that I had as well. I think we're all for the concept of making the profession easier to access, more affordable to access, and bringing more people on board. I guess as a public member, I'm not really familiar with the federally qualified health centers, and are they struggling with staffing shortages in a way that other entities are not? So why I guess I'm just looking for a little more information, and Roseanne, you may not have the answer to the question, but of why the focus on these particular entities versus others. I mean, there's staffing shortages across the board. So what's the unique situation about these particular centers? I think that's my question here.
I don't have a particular answer, although I know that these particular centers do struggle with staffing shortages, but I don't have a particular answer on why they chose just to focus on them. I
believe actually we might have that answer here in the room, and one of our members is right here, actually from CAMTA, if you want to speak to it. Thank you, Jen.
Almost afternoon. Jennifer Alley with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. We are in support of this bill, and just a little bit more background. So federally qualified health centers and rural health centers are Medi-Cal, primarily Medi-Cal-only providers, and they also may provide care to uninsured or immigrant populations. And they provide a whole range of services, so a lot of medical and behavioral health. So if somebody goes in for a physical health visit and they have a behavioral health condition and the provider's available, the FQHC can't bill for both visits. And so it kind of puts them at a disadvantage because they're unable to bill Medi-Cal for the physical and the behavioral health visit. And so in order to increase access, funding to the FQHCs for interns and people are, for our pre-licensees that are completing their 3,000 hours, it allows them to expand who it is that they have available to treat the populations that they serve. And so even though the stipend is very focused on FQHCs and rural health clinics, we do support the bill because we think it's critical for the clinic patients to be able to access behavioral health. And we think that this will address some gaps in the coverage. And just a little bit more background, there's other legislation this year that addresses increasing access or use of behavioral health providers in FQHCs that CAMP is also working in partnership with the California Primary Clinic Association to just kind of help improve access to the populations that are served at the clinic. So, yes.
Can I ask a question? So thank you for the clarification, and we know the amazing work that these clinics at federal qualified health centers are doing in all regions, especially in remote areas as well. So thank you for reiterating that. I know you're not the author of the bill, so I'm not going to ask you questions in the merit, but you know the reason why only on the exceptions or the support was coming only for internships that were actually applicable to these centers. I see the benefits for them, so I don't question that. Do you know the history?
I understand how the bill language could be clarified a little bit to make sure that it includes associates, funding for associates as well. And so I think that might be where part of the, changes might occur to make it a little bit more expansive. But it's really just to, increase the utilizations of any, qualified intern or associate that could provide treatment there.
And not only for federally qualified health centers as well.
Well, I think it would just be for federally qualified health centers and rural health centers. So during the pandemic, there was a Medi-Cal waiver that allowed for associate MFTs and associate LCSWs to actually work in FQHC. So the utilization of associates in that facility type is very, very new. There is legislation that would allow that to continue once the public health emergency ends at the federal level, because those waivers are a little bit different. So, that is something that the CAMP is also supporting, because there really just is, a significant unmet need for FQHC and rural health clinic patients. And so that's why we're supportive of both, ensuring that there's funding available and that there are people that are able to go into those
centers. Thank you. Thank you so much. And at this point, we'll ask to the public as well if there are any comments. Moderator, thank you.
We are open for public comment on 2666. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. And our first comment is coming from Adrienne Shilton, I believe is how we said the name last time. Bear with us just a moment and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning. Thank you so much. This is Adrienne Shilton with the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. And this bill, we're supportive in concept, but also want to appreciate the discussion today about the placement being only FQHCs, and they obviously are a critical partner of ours. But one amendment we have offered to the author's office is to expand that to also include community-based organizations, which are, at least for the specialty mental health system, the backbone of behavioral health delivery and services in our state. So just wanted to support that. And if that's something the BBS could also echo, we would be greatly appreciative. Thank you.
All right, and our next request comes from Rebecca Gonzales. Bear with us just a moment and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Rebecca Gonzales, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. We are also in support of this bill. We agree that there is, need at nonprofits. There are other bills on this agenda that are more focused on that, such as AB 2222. I can't speak for the author, but sometimes they were looking for a certain niche to fill, and the problems at FQHCs were probably brought to their attention, so they decided to tackle that piece, and sometimes other legislators tackle other pieces. So we are supportive of a number of bills to support people entering the behavioral health field. Thank you.
And that appears to be all of our requests for comments. Would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, moderator, thank you. Because also, again, as a reminder for the public, the votes that stand here in this committee are also brought back to the board, so it's not like the final vote, and reopen the conversation at the board level. I do feel, though, however, because all of these bills, even though sometimes they work together, every legislation is tackling a different issue without the bill, but also we know the history, each bill could die tomorrow or could be inclusive of other bills. So sometimes we're seeing bills coming together and become one bill. So I just don't want to address that a bill like this that is very important, that definitely we would like to support, excludes, though, the community health centers, because I'm really concerned about how reductive that umbrella is, because if the bill comes as it is, it goes as it is, and the other bills don't see the light of tomorrow, then we will have a bill that definitely is very useful for all the reasons that our associations have shared with us today, but it will exclude a lot of the community-based organizations and in the region that do a lot of the work as well. So I would like to support this in my motion, but unless amended with the inclusion, the opportunity to include the community-based organizations into the umbrella organization where they will qualify for it. Is it?
Would you like me to make a suggestion?
Yeah,
Okay.
Of course.
So what I'm thinking is, from what I'm hearing, is the support is amended and to reach out for technical support for the following amendments, including community-based organizations, like the others, identifying, making sure new funding sources identified.
Always.
And specify criteria, including type of registration and profession, and specifying the qualifying criteria.
Thank you, Lisa. Also, that will give us to be great, we are constant also with the other bills that we pretty much
Yeah, it's consistent with what we're saying, yeah.
Thank you. Couldn't find the word.
That is a new motion.
Yeah. So you would like to amend your previous motion, or would you like to withdraw your previous, because the other motion had a motion and a second?
We didn't have
No, wait, sorry.
That was the previous bill.
Okay.
We were thinking about
amend this
watching
one.
it, but then, we were cautious on not making it. But thank you,
Sorry.
Sabina. Yeah, so it was
Got
good
it.
to double
Perfect.
check.
Yeah.
So it's a fresh new motion on the floor that I made.
Perfect.
I'll
And you're
second that.
second, yeah. Okay, and so I believe now we go back to the public with the amendment? Yes. So, moderator, if you could, for the people that are present, if there are any other additional comments to the motion that we made? Apparently not, so we can ask the moderator to go and see if there are any public comments to the motion that we just made. Thank you, moderator.
We are now accepting comments on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. Also, if you would like to give us any feedback, it is my understanding that the people in the room have the microphone uncomfortably loud. Hopefully, you can hear the public commenter from before. And our first request for comment comes from Adrian Shilton. Hold on just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning, Adrienne Shilton with the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. Just want to support the motion that is on the table. Thank you so much.
And that appears to be our only request for comment at the moment. Would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Thank you. And at this point, unless there are any other additional comments from my fellow board member, we're good to go. And Christina, if we can call the vote, please.
Distracted by the activity in the room. Max Esposi?
Yes.
Andy Strack?
Sorry, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Christina. And there's a little bit of movement here just because we're trying to locate a new mic so that hopefully we overcome the issue of sound that we had before. Okay, wonderful. We're moving now to item 12 in our agenda, today's agenda, and it discussion and possible recommendation regarding Senate Bill 964 from Wiener on behavioral health.
Yeah, so SB 964 is a really interesting bill. It has to do with behavioral health broadly, and it does a number of different things to address the current, it's trying to address the current behavioral health workforce shortage. So it's really like almost multiple bills in one. So some of the things it does, it tasks the University of California education system with conducting an analysis of the scope of practice laws for behavioral health workers, as well as licensing, training requirements, and renewal requirements for an expired license, and an analysis of healthcare hiring guidelines and practices for behavioral health certification and license types, and also tasks the UC with providing recommendations based on the findings. Another thing it does is it tasks the state's public post-secondary education institutions with developing accelerated programs of study related to degrees in social work. It requires the Department of Health Care Access and Information to establish a stipend program for students pursuing a master's degree in social work with a specialized focus on public behavioral health. It requires the Department of Health Care Access and Information to request the UC system to contract with them to provide a landscape analysis of the current behavioral health workforce and the state's workforce needs. And it requires the Department of Health Care Services to establish a certifying body and provide for a statewide certification for peer support specialists and amend the Medicaid state plan to include certified peer support specialists as a provider type. So one major thing that this bill is kind of moving along that I just want to point out before I go into my analysis is that it's actually clarifying something. Right now, the law requires that DHCS is working, they're supposed to be working right now based on current law on establishing statewide requirements for counties or agencies representing counties to use in developing peer support specialist certification programs. So this would bring peer support specialist certification all under the central umbrella of DHCS rather than leaving it to individual counties. So I think that's probably a good thing because it provides for clarity and consistency across the state. And so that's one thing, one major change that I see here. A couple of things that I would just like to point out. This bill does a lot of good things. I think that the data from the UC system is much needed. This board is always, trying to gain data and demographic information and find out where workforce is needed. That's not the easiest thing to do, and I think the UC system is probably best equipped to be able to do that. One thing is we would like to see possibly in the UC analysis, it says that the UC system should conduct an analysis and make recommendations about the scope of practice laws for behavioral health care workers and also for behavioral health professionals. The bill defines behavioral health as including both mental health and substance use disorders. That's still pretty general. There's a lot of different professionals that could fall under that umbrella. So for purposes of containing a complete analysis, it may be helpful to specify exactly which types of mental health professionals are intended to be included so that the data on all the desired types of professionals is obtained. For example, if the UC system is going to gather information about, a number of different mental health professionals, it would be kind of a disservice to this board if one of ours was left out, but the others were included. So it would be nice to have that specification so we would know exactly what we're going to be getting ahead of time. One other thing to point out is that the stipend program that this bill establishes under HCAI, it is a stipend program for students pursuing a master's degree in social work only. The board may wish to discuss whether or not is it appropriate to establish a stipend program only for social work students or for other behavioral health students as well, such as the board's other license types. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion.
Excuse me, Max Disposi here. When I was reading the bill first, it really did look like try to be as inclusive as possible compared to the others. Again, we're not, putting one bill against the others, but it's, I do like how comprehensive it is, and also the research analysis. The problem is that sometimes what we continue to fail is that when we have an emergency, a crisis, and now it's been going on for years, we miss to gather data that really allow us to how to be effective in intervention that we have, from the funding, from the analysis of funding to also where the disparities are. So I do like this bill, so I would like to hear more from the public as well, but yeah, it seems to be the most comprehensive so far. And Wendy.
I would just agree with a lot of that. I think this would help answer a lot of questions that the board usually has when I think we've asked some of these questions today about some of the bills, about where the needs are and where the gaps are. And so having a good base of data to pull from to be able to answer those questions is important. But Roseanne, you bring up a couple of clarifications that would be needed, and we really want to make sure that the board will be able to be a partner in this effort with the University of California on this to make sure that both the analysis that they're doing and the requirements that are in place are accurate so that the analysis can be as helpful as possible at the end. I think what would not be good is we get to the end of this process and some information was left out or professions were left out, and then the information is sort of marginally useful. So, I think the points that you have are well taken, and I'm interested in hearing from the stakeholders as well. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Wendy. Any comments from the public in person? Now that we have a nice mic, you can use that one. Yes, thank you. Take your time, no rush. And the green light.
Oh, look at this. Very nice. Jennifer Alley with CAMP again. We don't have a formal position on SB 964. We have been having some conversations with the sponsor, the Steinberg Institute, and other organizations. We anticipate some amendments to the bill. There is a budget ask associated with this bill, so it's not coming from funding for the scholarship, and we anticipate seeing additional scholarship monies for MFTs, psychologists, and LPCCs, and other groups later in the bill. Right now, the current draft only has funding available for social workers, and so, but I'm not sure when those amendments are gonna, will be in print. That's all I have.
Thank you. I hope that came through. Any other comments from the board? No. Moderator, if you can help us to see if there are comments from the public. Thank you.
We are open for public comment on Senate Bill 964. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. And our first request for comment comes from Rebecca Gonzales. Hold on just a moment, please, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Rebecca Gonzales with the National Association of Social Workers California chapter, and we are in support of this bill. I believe the stipend probably was only in there first, only for social workers initially, because it is trying to reinstitute a stipend that had ended a few years back. There was a stipend for the same amount of money that used Prop 63 funds, and it was administered through CalSWEC, the California Social Work Education Center. So ever since the end of that stipend program, there has been a desire to see it reinstituted. So that might provide some clarity on why the bill was in that form. But no, we are supportive of this program, of this bill. I think that there will continue to be refinements to different areas as it goes through the process, but we are grateful to the author for its introduction. Thank you.
And that appears to be all of our requests for comments at the moment. Do you wish to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you. So back to the board. I think this is my personal stand on this. I think definitely it's important to support the bill. Perhaps, I don't know if there is a language, Roseanne, that we could adopt, because obviously there are some minor changes in regards to, as you were suggesting, for instance, in the definition of behavioral health care workers and behavioral health professionals. Perhaps, you know, we see that recurring a lot, because sometimes people that legislate really have a hard time to understand the difference, and it's not to their fault, or to prioritize social worker because in the imaginary of people, they are the only people doing the work outside and reaching out to folks and helping them through, which is not the case. They are not the only one on the list. So I wonder if there is, if I can make a motion to support the bill with recommending staff with any minors, not substantial changes to the bill that had to do with language and definitions and so forth. Is that?
Yeah, so I would suggest, it sounds like you're looking for a support position.
Yes.
And then in addition to that, on the side, direct staff to provide technical support, asking for a better definition in Health and Safety Code 127815 with references to the UC study to better define behavioral health care workers and professionals.
Correct. Wendy, you feel? Okay. So I'm good to make this motion. So, yes. Thank you, Roseanne. So that motion is on the floor.
I'll second.
Thank you, Wendy. And so since we have a motion now on the floor, we are going back to the public. And for the in-person public member here, there are no comments. So we're going out to the public comment section for our people on the web. Thank you, moderator.
We are now accepting public comments. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we'll take requests for comments in the order they are received. Let's take just a moment now to see if we receive a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comments, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you. Okay, back to the board with a motion on the floor and a second. I think we are ready to vote. Christina?
I'd like to ask for a clarification on the motion.
Sure.
Is that a support if amended or a support with direction given to staff to work with the office?
It's a support position and then separate, it's not support if amended, it's support and then on the side asking staff to provide technical assistance.
Okay, thank you. Here's roll call. Max Wisworski?
Yes.
Lindsay Scott?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. We're moving now to item 13, discussion and possible recommendation regarding Senate Bill 966 from Lyman, federally qualified health centers and rural health clinic visits. That's the title. Roseanne, thank you.
Yeah, and Jen alluded to this bill a little bit earlier, and CAMPS is actually one of the sponsors, along with the California Health Plus Advocates. And this bill proposes allowing Medi-Cal reimbursement for covered mental health services provided by associate clinical social workers or associate marriage and family therapists who are employed by a federally qualified health center or rural health clinic. So we talked a little bit about earlier that these FQHCs and RHCs exist. They're covered Medi-Cal benefits, and they're reimbursed on a per-visit basis. So there's kind of a complicated formula that they go through to get the Medi-Cal reimbursement rate. And the bill the current law defines a FQHC or RHC visit as a face-to-face counter between a patient and one of several types of different professionals. The two that are under the board's jurisdiction are currently listed as allowing LCSWs and LMFTs. So this particular bill would add to that definition of, would add a couple of professionals to that definition of allowable people who can be reimbursed as a visit. It would add associate clinical social workers and associate marriage and family therapists when they're supervised by a licensee as required by the board. And also it makes some really technical requirements to the funding, the billing requirements for an FQHC or RHC. If basically it removes the requirement that if one of these centers elects to add the services of an LMFT and bill them as a separate visit, that doesn't constitute a change in scope of service where it must apply for an adjustment in its per visit rate. Apparently that's like a pretty cumbersome process if they elect to do that, so it removes that requirement. So in terms of a little bit of a background, in May 2020, the Department of Healthcare Services temporarily allowed ASWs and AMFTs to serve as billable provider types for FQHCs and RHCs due to the COVID-19 state of emergency. Usually those two types of associates can't bill in those centers, but because of the COVID emergency, they were allowed to. So the author is trying to extend flexibilities allowed during the pandemic to hire and bill for ASWs and AMFTs. They're saying that this will help with the continuity of care for patients and increase access to a diverse behavioral health workforce. And it also removes some of the current administrative barriers to utilizing LMFTs due to this change in scope of services requirements. One thing I'd like to point out, which there's been bills run by CalPIC in the past to include LPCCs, and those bills were ultimately unsuccessful due to funding, but LPCCs and APCCs are not included currently. One additional way to increase the pool of mental health professionals would be to allow the LPCCs and APCs to also provide services as billable providers for FQHCs and RHCs. And so I was unable to obtain an answer of whether CalPIC is pursuing that or not. So I would assume that they are not at this time, but that is one thing that they have pursued via a couple of different bill proposals in years past. So I'll open it up for discussion now.
Thank you, Roseanne. Thank you so much. Are there any comments from my fellow board members? No? Likewise, I would like to hear from the public, that's for sure. I see a lot of support for this bill, so I see the reason why. It definitely goes in line with our licensing committee, our telehealth committee, and the work we're trying to do to make permanent some of the choices that were made during COVID and also create new guidelines for the same. If there are any comments here on the public, I see Kampf coming forward. Thank you. And then we will open to the public via web. Thank you.
Good morning, Jennifer Alley with CAMPT again. Thank you. That was an excellent presentation on the bill. CAMPT is one of the co-sponsors, and we just think it's important to provide additional locations for associates to complete their hours. And we do think that it'll offer some continuity of care for associates that have been providing treatment for the last almost 2 years in these settings for the patients that they serve. And additionally, I think that it'll help FQHCs find licensed professionals, because I think that people tend to stay where they work, and so as they transition from an associate to a licensed professional, hopefully that they will continue to provide care in those settings. So that's all I have, and thank you.
Thank you. And any comments? Moderator, if we can ask for the public.
We are now open for public comment on Senate Bill 966. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. And our first comment comes from Adrian Shilton. Hold on just a moment, please, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning, Adrian Shilton with the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. Want to echo the comments made by my colleague from CAMP. The Alliance is also in support of this bill. Super important to do everything that we can to address our workforce crisis. And we believe that allowing ASWs and AMFTs will continue to maintain the quality care that the FQHCs are serving. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And moderator, I was just having a hard time to understand the name of the person that just spoke in their qualification.
Adrian Shilton.
Okay.
And by qualification, I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, no, if there was an association. I couldn't hear at the beginning of the, it was, okay.
She's from the California Alliance of Child and Family Services.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Sorry, it didn't come through really clear at the beginning. The volume was too low. Okay. Any other public comments?
Yes, we have a request from Rebecca Gonzales. Hold on just a moment, please, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Rebecca Gonzales, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. We are in support of this bill. Thank you.
All right, and that is all we have for requests for comments at the time. Do you wish to close comments for the moment?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Okay, back to the board. We don't have a motion right now. I can make a motion in support of the bill without any further recommendations. So, and if there isn't a second?
I'd like to make a second.
Thank you, Wendy. And at this point, we still have to go to the public legal counsel? Yes. Accordingly, yes, even though we know there is support, but it's important to do so. Okay, moderator, if we can open to the public again, because we have a motion standing in support of the bill, so that we can see if there are any further comments in case someone hasn't expressed it yet.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to close comments now?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Okay, going back to the board, we have a motion on the floor to support the bill and a second from our board member. And I think Christina can call the vote. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. We're moving now to item number 14 in the agenda, which is discussion and possible recommendations regarding Senate Bill 1002, Portantino, workers' compensations, licensed clinical social workers. And Roseanne, thank you.
Yeah, so SB 1002 adds LCSWs as direct providers in the workers' compensation system. Under current law for workers' compensation, it provides that medical, surgical, and hospital treatment includes, but is not limited to, services and supplies by physical therapists, practitioners, and acupuncturists licensed in California and acting within their scope of practice. So those are the only three outside of physicians that it specifically names right now. But the law also does specify that treatment reasonable to required to cure or relieve from the effects of an injury shall include the services of LMFTs, LPCCs, or LCSWs acting within their scope of practice if the injured person is referred to them by a licensed physician and surgeon with employer approval for treatment. So the LPCCs, LMFTs, and LCSWs can be utilized, but they have to be right now referred by a licensed physician and surgeon and approved by the employer. So this bill would add LCSWs to the provision that that lists physical therapists, chiropractors, and acupuncturists as able to act without a physician referral. It states that an employer's workers' compensation insurer may provide the employee with access to the services of an LCSW acting within their scope of practice, and the medical network providers can add LCSWs as network providers. The author's office is basically trying to enable an employee to seek services from an LCSW without a physician referral in the workers' compensation system. I don't have a lot of commentary about this other than one obvious question is that it does not include also LMFTs and LPCCs. Of course, we like to treat all of our licensees equally wherever we can. So I'm not sure the reason for them not to be included. The Labor Code does provide that they can provide that LMFTs and LPCCs can also provide if referred by a licensed physician and surgeon. So it's unclear why if LCSWs were able to, that LMFTs and LPCCs would not also be included. But that's the only comment I have at this time.
Thank you, Roseanne. And it appears to be, like we say in the past, sometimes it's just a technical missing, in the bill more than just an intent to exclude others, right? So that's when our technical assistance is showing to be very valuable in these cases. Okay, are there any comments, Wendy? Well,
no, I think your comments are on.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to make a motion at this point, just to of support of the bill, because there are not really in the bill any red flags that could concern the BBS at this moment, the way it's written. So I would like to make a motion to support the bill. Wendy, you're more than welcome to second now or later.
I think second, but do we also want to
hear the
include the technical direct staff to provide technical?
Right. Yes. No. Thank you. Thank you. We can support the bill without any amendments, but just with the recommendations to provide technical support that the staff can provide. That
support, and then separately, the staff provides technical support to include LMFTs and LPCCs.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Roseanne. Any comments from? I see a comment coming through. For the people that are present here.
Good morning. This is Jennifer Alley again with CAMP. We have had some similar concerns with the bill. CAMP does not have a formal position. We have met with the author's office and requested that LMFTs and LPCCs be included in the bill. and the author's office has not agreed to that change yet. We do have concerns because we feel it elevates LCSWs above LMFTs and LPCCs in the workers' comp setting because it allows them more direct access to patients than it would. And so it kind of makes the playing field in that system a little bit uneven. The author's office said that this was a significant change in workers' comp to allow social workers or LCSWs to have direct access. It's a big change in the workers' comp system. They said that MFTs could move, if camps move forward with similar legislation next year, that they wouldn't oppose it, but they didn't agree that they would sponsor it. I don't know what camp's position will be moving forward with our board, if that is something that we would pursue. I would have to get approval, to be able to do that. But we are concerned that it does make the playing field uneven. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. And I know we are confident that our staff knows that the BBS position will never be able to single out one licensee versus another in order to have access. So I stand with my motion just in case with that clarity as well. Okay. For our moderator, if we can go outside and see if there are any public comments.
We are now accepting public comment on this matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to close comments at this time? Wait, hold on. We have a request from Rebecca Gonzales. Hold on just a moment, please, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you, Rebecca Gonzales, NASW. I didn't see the comment box, so sorry for the delay. We are supporting this bill. It benefits our licensees, and I think the problem resides within the workers' comp system, not really understanding the scope of practice of LMFTs because they still think of it as marriage related and not necessarily work related. And so I don't know, it seems to me that the work needs to be done within the system for them to understand what the scope of practice is of the different licensees. But I know that's what the conversation has been behind the scenes. But because this bill benefits our licensees, we definitely are in support. Thank you.
Okay, and if anyone else is looking, we had a refresh on WebEx, so if you do not see the Q&A box, in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you will see an option with a little square and Q&A to reopen your question and answer comment box. And with that, back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So back to the board, we have a motion standing with technical recommendations. No, is that the definition? I'll let it. You do that.
No problem. Support. The motion is to support the bill, and then separately on the sides, direct staff to provide technical support to suggest inclusion of LMFTs and LPCCs.
Perfect. That's how it was intended. And then there is a second from Wendy. There are no other conversations or discussions. We are moving to vote. Christina?
Max DeSosi?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. We're moving through item 15 of our today's agenda. Again, discussion and possible recommendation regarding the Senate Bill 1229, McGuire, Mental Health Workforce Grants.
Yeah, so,
Thank you, Roseanne.
And this bill was updated yesterday, just for anybody following along. You should be looking at the analysis that's dated, version amended April 18th, 2022. And so this bill has a couple of sponsors, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, and the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. And this is the 5th out of the 5 bills that kind of create a grant program things to encourage professionals working in underserved areas. So this particular bill creates a grant program under California's Student Aid Commission to increase the number of mental health professionals serving children and youth. It proposes awarding grants of up to $25,000 to postgraduate students enrolled in an accredited social work program or a program designed to lead to licensure as an LMFT, LPCC, LEP, or designated to provide a services credential with specialization in people personnel services. The student must meet certain specified criteria, including agreeing to work in an eligible California-based nonprofit entity or a local education agency when gaining the required experience for licensure. So under the grant program, the Commission will award up to 10,000 grants over a 3-year period, and the grants can be up to $25,000 each. And then to be eligible, like I kind of indicated a minute ago, the applicant must meet certain criteria. They have to be enrolled in a California postgraduate program for social work, LMFT licensure, LEP licensure, or LPCC licensure, or a people personnel services credential. They have to work in either a California-based nonprofit or a local education agency. They have to work there for up to 2 years, and then they have to ultimately satisfy the requirements to become a associate with the board after completing their graduate program. If they fail to meet the requirements of the program, then they would be required to repay the state for each year they fail to meet the program's requirements. The Student Aid Commission would be required to award at least 60% of the grants to applicants who commit to working with a local education agency for their supervised experience hours. And the Student Aid Commission would give priority in awarding grants to communities with the greatest need as determined by the department, including factors such as the adverse childhood experiences scores. And then finally, the bill defines a eligible California-based nonprofit entity as a nonprofit entity located in California that provides mental health services to children and youth. This bill does identify a funding source. It's accompanied by a $250 million budget request to fund the grant program. And then in terms of comments, there's just a few technical amendments that are pretty minor. I've already reached out to the author or to the sponsor regarding them because they're very technical. There's a couple of incorrect references in Education Code Section 69540 subsection C. Basically, it's referencing, I believe that they intend to also reference LCSW experience hours in that, and that there may be an unnecessary reference in there, which probably requires some more discussion with the LEP Association. Another bullet item, I said the section references are incorrect, and they just need to reference the correct sections of our code. An easy mistake to make. It's just really technical stuff. And then there's a place where LEPs, I believe, need to be included. And then there's some references in subsections H and M that reference the department, and there's no particular department identified. And so we just want to make sure that it's not the Department of Consumer Affairs. It's kind of similar to that other bill where we don't track where people are working, and it would be very expensive for us to do so. So I think that just needs to be clarified. So I've reached out to the sponsor on that, but otherwise I don't have any particular comments other than that.
Thank you, Roseanne. Are there any comments from the board?
No, I think I'm prepared to offer a motion, if that's all right, if that's the right time, to support, and then also separately direct staff to continue conversations to pursue the technical changes noted in the analysis.
Perfect timing. I'll second that, and we can open the discussion. Are there any comments from the public that's present? Look like there is.
Jennifer Alley with Campton. We do support this bill.
Thank you, Jennifer. Moderator, if we can open to public comments with the motion on the floor. Thank you.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. And our first comment comes from Adrian Shilton. Hold on just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning. This is Adrienne Shilton with the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. We are really proud to work in partnership with our Superintendent of Public Instruction to move this bill and budget item forward. And also, I really want to appreciate Roseanne from the BBS for all of her technical support on this bill. We are going to be taking the suggested amendments back as well to the author's office. And just our intent here with this bill is to do everything that we can to support the workforce serving children and youth in both community-based agencies and in schools. So really appreciative with the motion, perhaps to have the BBS support this bill after we correct the code sections. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And our next request comes from Rebecca Gonzales. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Rebecca Gonzales, NASW California. We're also in support of this bill. Thank you.
And those are all our requests for public comment at the moment. Would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Okay, we're back to the board with a motion on the floor from Wendy and second from me, and I think we can call the vote. Christina, please.
Max Esposti?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're moving to item 16 on the agenda items, discussion and possible recommendation regarding Senate Bill 1237, Newman, licensees and military services.
Yeah, this is kind of an odd bill because it clarifies a meaning of a law that's in place that I think another board interpreted differently. This board doesn't interpret the law that way. However, it is a bill that affects all DCA boards, so we do need to bring it to the board for consideration. So this bill would clarify the meaning of the term called to active duty with respect to the requirement in law that licensing boards under DCA waive fees and continuing education requirements of a licensee or registrant called to active duty as a member of the U.S. Armed Forces or California National Guard. So right now, under current law, a DCA board is required to waive CE requirements and also renewal fees for a licensee or a registrant if they're called to active duty of a member of the U.S. Armed Forces or California National Guard if they meet certain criteria. They need to possess a current valid license with the board at the time they're called to active duty. The renewal requirements are only waived while they're on active duty, and they need to provide written documentation of the active duty services. In general, they're prohibited from engaging in activities requiring a license while the waiver is in effect, but there is an exception to this. They can provide services, but the board must convert the license status to military active, and then they can provide services, just not in a private practice. So there's kind of some allowances there, except for private practice situations. Once they're discharged from active duty, the licensed or registrant must meet all necessary renewal requirements, including completing CE and paying the fee, within 6 months of their discharge date. And they also must notify the board of their discharge within 60 days. And then right now in federal law, there is a very specific definition of active duty. In federal law, it includes full-time duty, annual training duty, and attendance at a school designated as a service school by law or by the Secretary of Military Department. And federal law doesn't include full-time National Guard duty, but our law is written to include that. So what this bill does is it clarifies the term called to active duty. It specifies that the term called to active duty has the same meaning as active duty as defined in federal law, and also includes individuals on active duty in the California National Guard. And so it's very much clarifying a technicality in the term called to active duty. The author notes that there has been cases at other DCA boards, not this board, where the DCA has determined that military personnel with active orders to serve in a permanent career position at a base are not called to active duty within the meaning of the exemption from renewal fees and other renewal requirements. And the author states that this is an overly narrow interpretation that has resulted in undue burdens for active military personnel compelled to maintain their professional license while also serving in a military assignment outside of California. So overall, the author states that they're seeking to expand the exemption for renewal fees and other renewal requirements to not just called to active duty individuals, but those in a military active duty placement in a permanent career position at a base located outside of California. So in terms of what this board has done, when we get a request to waive the renewal fee and CE requirements due to being called for active duty, it doesn't require the length of duty to be stated as a condition of approval. We don't ask, so how long are you going to be on active duty? So if it's going to be kind of semi-permanent, they're going to be called out, let's say, for a couple of years. We don't need to know that. We place them on the status if they qualify and they can prove that they've been called, and then it's up to them. Within 60 days of their discharge, they just have to notify us. So they get placed in that military status, and then when they notify us that within their 60 days that their discharge is done, that's when it would, it would go away, and they would need to, within 6 months, make that up. So we don't ask, if they're going outside of California, which it sounds like was a problem before. We don't ask, what the length of time is. We just have them provide the proof. So it doesn't really affect our board, but it is changing the law, like I said. We're not reporting a fiscal impact on this bill. Since this particular waiver became effective, that was in January of 2013, we've had a total of 15 applications for this waiver, and we currently have 7 individuals utilizing this waiver right now. So not a big effect to us, but like I said, it does indirectly affect us, so that's why we're talking about it.
Thank you, Roseanne. So my understanding is pretty much we're already operating with the premises of this bill. It's not like something is going to change for us. No. So I'm only guessing here. So even an approval is not, it really doesn't affect the BBS in any ways because this is how we are operating. So it's a bill that we are notified for because the law is changing, but it's not really changing what we already do. Right. Okay. I hope I didn't confuse people by trying to understand it myself. If there are any comments from the public, from my board member, actually, sorry, Wendy. Okay, and then from the public here, no comments. And moderator, if you can help us to gather some comments.
We are now accepting public comment on 1237, I believe. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for comments, would you like to close comments at this time?
Thank you,
Mr.
moderator.
Chair?
Yes, my mic was off. Thank you. Okay, we're back to the board now, and I don't believe that we need any recommendations from the board. We can just stay neutral on this.
You can stay neutral or watch it if that's what you would like to do.
Yeah, I don't see any need to intervene. Okay.
Watch. Okay.
We're watching it. Okay, thank you. We're moving to the next item in the agenda, which is item number 17. Discussion and possible recommendation regarding Senate Bill 1365 from Jones on licensing boards and procedures.
Yeah, okay, last bill for the day. So this particular bill requires boards under DCA to publicly post a list of criteria used to evaluate applicants with criminal convictions on its website. And it also requires DCA in general as a department to take steps to establish procedures for evaluating and assisting applicants with criminal convictions. So right now, as we've discussed previously, our board, due to AB 2138, which was run a few years ago, there's certain criteria under which a board can deny a license that are very specific already. The conviction took place within the previous 7 years, or its formal discipline within the previous 7 years, unless it was a serious felony. So those criteria are out there. The board is prohibited from requiring an applicant to disclose any information or documentation regarding their criminal history. We get that from the fingerprint reports. The board may request mitigating information for purposes of determining if a conviction is substantially related to the profession, or to see if there's evidence of rehabilitation, but the disclosure is voluntary and lack of disclosure is not permitted to be used as a factor in the board's decision to grant or deny an application. The board is already required to develop criteria to aid it when considering the denial or suspension or revocation of a license to determine whether a crime is substantially related, and a summary of that criteria must be posted on the board's website. And the board is also required to develop criteria to evaluate the rehabilitation of a person. And then when denying a license, anytime the board denies a license, the board is required to either file and serve a statement of issues or notify the applicant of the denial and state the reason of the denial and the right to appeal if they request a hearing within 60 days. So under this particular bill, each board will be required to publicly post a list of criteria used to evaluate applicants with criminal convictions. DCA would need to establish a process to assist boards in developing their list of criteria, and they would need to develop a process for each board to use in verifying applicant information and performing applicant background checks. And the process would be required to require applicants to provide certified court documents instead of listing convictions on the application. And the process must also include procedures to expedite the fee waiver process for a low-income applicant requesting a background check. And then finally, the bill would require DCA to develop a procedure to provide for an informal appeals process to take place between an initial license denial and an administrative law hearing. And it suggests the DCA examine the informal appeals process used by its Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. Okay, so the author states that that the current law makes it difficult for formerly incarcerated populations to apply for licenses, and they need clearer instructions and better transparency of the process to assist them. So a few different thoughts on this. First of all, regarding the fee waivers for the background checks, the bill is stating that DCA needs to develop a process to include procedures to expedite the fee waiver process for a low-income applicant requesting a background check. There's not, that I'm aware of, a fee waiver process for a low-income applicant requesting a background check with DCA, because DCA doesn't charge that fee. That fee is paid directly at the LiveScan site, and it goes to the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice is getting that money for their services. It would need to be up to them whether or not they had a fee waiver and what that process would be. So I don't believe that there's anything that DCA can really do to waive that, unless DCA was going to pay it for the individuals, and that would be a huge fiscal. So that's really up to DOJ how they want to handle that. We do already have a lot of information on our website that we put up there after 2138 got passed. I've included a link to that document. It has a list of criteria used to evaluate applicants with criminal convictions. It explains the 7-year washout periods for the convictions and disciplinary action. And so that is on there. We've tried to make that as comprehensive as possible so that individuals with a conviction that want to apply really understand. And current law already requires DCA boards to post substantially related conviction criteria on there, so that is on the FAQ document already. Another thing, there appears to be a conflict with current law in the bill. Current law it prohibits a board from requiring an applicant to disclose any information regarding their criminal history. We received that directly from the Department of Justice, and that's really the best source, because there's no worrying about forgetting or, not having all of the information available that the applicant may not have access to. So we just get that all. They pay for their fingerprint. We get all of that from DOJ and go from there. The bill proposes requiring applicants to provide court-certified documents related to their convictions, which we can't currently do under current law. A law change would be needed to that. And it's just not as accurate because, and it's less cumbersome on the applicant. They don't have to deal with gathering all of that, trying to remember everything that might be needed. We just get all of that directly from the source. So that's kind of a thought there. In terms of the informal appeals process that they're asking for, and they said the author suggested examining the model for the DCA's Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. They have a disciplinary review committee that's appointed by the governor, and these committees handle appeals from applicants and licensees and then consist of appointed members. So that would be up to DCA to kind of look into further under the bill. It would probably require some additional structural changes to the boards in order to do, since it is appointed positions that are on that particular committee for BSIS. So you can see what everybody thinks about this one.
Wow, mamma mia. There is a lot in the bill that needs to be addressed. So I don't even know if opposing per se will even resolute. I feel like we just stay neutral on this because there is too much to address and change, in my opinion. Besides the technicalities that you share with us, there are also issues that pertain to the bill. So I'm conflicted between opposing the bill or just staying away from even touching it and so forth. But any... Do
you want my 2 cents?
Yes, of course.
So there's a lot that still needs to be worked out with this. I think there's some kind of clarifications that need to be made with current law. I think there's some sort of misunderstandings about how current law works. So I think this is still going to evolve. And right now, we should just, wait and see what happens. If it's still around in like July and, it has some of these elements that don't seem to be changing, then I think that's when it's time to be concerned.
Right. Okay. So definitely I would like to make a motion. No, I would like to just not to make a motion. I'm getting tired here. And just not to move for a bill. But definitely would like to hear from the public, unless also Wendy has any other comments. And okay, from the public that's present, no comments. And from moderator, if you can open to the public and see if there are any comments coming from the web.
Absolutely. We are now taking public comment on Senate Bill 1365. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests for comments. And our first request comes from Rebecca Gonzales. Hold on just one moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon. Rebecca Gonzales with the National Association of Social Workers California chapter. We don't have an official position on this bill yet, but we have been working with the Occupational Licensing Coalition that has very grave concerns about this bill. Basically, they feel the bill fails to consider the existing laws and variation in boards under the DCA, and the bill references one process, the Department of Insurance, that is more onerous and less protective of people with convictions under the guise of an improved process while harming applicants with convictions. So yeah, we see some grave concerns here. Hoping the bill will change in the future. I want to thank the board and especially Roseanne for being a partner in this process in trying to be transparent to applicants with your fact sheet and helping people with past convictions learn how to navigate the process, what convictions count, which ones don't. And I think this board has done a great job in implementing AB 2138, but definitely caution on this particular bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that appears to be all of our requests for comments at the moment. Do you wish to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving back to the board, we don't move any recommendations, so we're moving to the next agenda item. That was our last bill, indeed, Roseanne. So thank you so much for your hard work and representations throughout these bills. We know that takes a lot of work. And now we are moving to an update on board-sponsored legislations, which is item 18 of our agenda.
Yeah, so the board is actually sponsoring two main bills this year, and then also a portion of the omnibus bill. So AB 1758, which is, I'm sure everybody wants a status update on this. This is our supervision via video conference bill in all settings. So that bill is moving along nicely. The waiver that allows supervision via video conferencing in all settings has been extended until June 30th of 2022, so that's extended a little bit more. In the meantime, this bill is an urgency measure, so it will be, if the governor signs it, would be effective immediately instead of waiting until next January. The bill just passed the Assembly Business and Professions Committee, so that's its first major committee, and it's now in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. We are working with the author. We have let, and the BMP committees, we have let them know that the urgency of this matter and that we would like this bill to move as quickly as possible. We do have to, of course, respect the legislature's time frame as well. And so we're hoping that this bill will move through quickly, and we're waiting to see the next step for the Assembly Appropriations Committee hearing date. So the other bill that we're running is AB 1759. This is not an urgency measure. This bill proposes two changes to the board's CE requirements and also a clarification regarding telehealth. And so that bill also just passed the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and is moving on to Assembly Appropriations. SB 1495 is the committee bill or omnibus bill that Senate Business and Professions Committee runs every year. It's usually sets of minor technical or non-substantive amendments to add clarity and consistency to current law. Staff had three separate requests for this bill this year. Only one of them has been amended in so far. It was a minor technical amendment that's in there right now. There's another minor technical amendment that the committee staff has indicated that they are going to work on adding in. When we requested the language, it has to run through Legislative Council, and although it was a simple amendment, they proposed some larger structural changes which might be problematic, which we didn't want to do for those reasons. So we're kind of in discussions on that one. And then the last piece, they directed to the Health Committee, and the Health Committee actually has opted not to take that particular piece. This is based on a bill that was run a couple of years ago regarding the Mental Health Parity Act and the decision to include trainees in the definition of a health care provider. They were included, and then the bill was being amended last minute, and the board requested that LPCC trainees be removed from the bill, and that LMFT trainees be continued to be allowed into the bill, but have some specific language that they are under the jurisdiction of their school pertaining to a specific code section. And I've included the language. The Health Committee they declined to want to include that. They felt that I think that the feeling was it's kind of opposite for the direction we're going in trying to open up the scope of healthcare professionals. And so they've opted not to do that. If the board wishes to continue to pursue it, they can. I don't know that there's really a great harm in leaving it, but that's something that the board can discuss in the future if it chooses to. So those are the three bills that the board is sponsoring. There's a couple of two-year bills that we're running. Two of them we talked about today, and they're still moving. AB 29 was another one. The board had considered it, and it is now dead as a two-year bill. So the status is in your packet for those.
Thank you, Roseanne. Thank you for the updates. I believe there are, unless there are any questions about the updates, none from me. We are moving to item 19 for the update on the board rulemaking proposal.
And actually, I'm filling in for Christy today, so hopefully I could do
I was wondering
as good a job she can do. Christy is out there in the audience, I believe, but I'm going to go through this update for you. The first one we're going to talk about is the continuing education and additional training requirements. This was submitted to the Department of Consumer Affairs for final review process. This was originally approved by the board in 2019. There was additional language changes that were brought to our attention by DCA, and then those language changes were actually adopted, or not adopted, but approved by the board on September 2021. And this proposal does various things. It updates the content requirements for the human sexuality, child abuse assessment and reporting, and alcoholism and other chemical substance dependency courses. This will try to create consistencies. It strikes the 18-hour CE exception for initial renewal periods. Recasts the CE exceptions as temporary waivers, so makes a little language change. Requires licensees who are granted a waiver to complete 6 hours of CE in law and ethics. Updates CE waiver forms incorporated by reference, and then specifies a maximum of 18 hours of CE may be met by teaching courses in each renewal period, but kind of defines that the course must be taught for a board accepted provider to count. Additionally, it allows a licensee who completes a board occupational analysis to be credited with 6 hours of CE. And one other thing, it clarifies that professional associations are the only type of organizations that may be recognized as a CE provider. So that's the first one. The second regulatory package is the examination waiting period, professional corporations and accrediting agencies and equivalent degrees. It's kind of a lot of different little cleanup things. So the board basically approved these at their November 2019 meeting. It has been delayed, though, we have various other competing workload priorities that has kind of put a pause on this. But this will update examination waiting periods. It adds LPCCs to code sections pertaining to ownership. It deletes outdated text pertaining to equivalent accrediting agencies for MFT applicants. And it also specifies the accrediting agencies that are acceptable for LEP applicant degree programs. Lastly, this is the big one that will be coming up. This is for the enforcement process, and this is basically doing what the uniform standards related to substance abuse and disciplinary guidelines. These were approved at the board meeting way back in 2017. The DCA began their review in July 2017, but these were put on hold we were waiting for the passage of 2138 because that would make some substantial changes to what we were working on. That was approved in 2020, so now we're ready to begin again to look at these. So what we are doing now, staff is meeting and kind of looking at some of the regulatory changes we might want to make, and we'll be presenting those at the July 2022 committee meeting for your review. Yeah. So, yeah, let me make sure. So what this does, though, there's the proposal changes will fall into 3 different categories. Some will be amendments seeking to strengthen certain penalties that are available to the board. There will be amendments seeking to update regulations or the Uniform Standard Guidelines in response to statutory changes to the Business and Profession Code. And then there will also be amendments to clarify language that has been identified as unclear or needing further details. And that's the regulatory. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you, Steve, for updating us. And actually, we are moving to the last 2 agenda items. The next one is suggestion for future agenda item, which is not the public comments items for items not in the agenda. So it's a suggestion for future agenda items. Wendy, do you have any? No? And we go to the public with this, right? Legal counsel? Yes, we do. Moderator, if there are any public comments in regards to suggestion for future agenda items. Thank you.
We are now taking public comment on suggestions for future agenda items. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. Let's take just a few moments now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, do you wish to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, moderator. And since I skipped it before, if there are any suggestions for future agenda items here for the people that are present, it's your time, but I don't think we do. Okay, we're moving to now the next item 21, public comments for items not on the agenda. And just as a reminder that the board may not discuss or take any actions on any matter that is raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. If there are any public comments from the people that are here today? No? And moderator, would you please open to see if there are any public comments for items not in the agenda?
We are taking public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. If you are a dial-in user, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will take requests for comments in the order they are received. Let's take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like to close comments at this time?
Yes, thank you, moderator. And with that, we'll conclude the meeting today. I believe we're correct. And we are adjourned to meeting again for our board meeting session, which will be on May 5th and 6th of May 2022. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the public and the audience for coming forward today. Thank you so much.